1 2 party people in a place to be. What up? I am Brimstone 127 representing the Museum of Graffiti. We are all the way live because it's our 9 to 5. I hope everybody out there is interview with the one and only OG Drew One representing LA. But before we jump in, let's see whose face is in the place. Melancholy, what's going on? UAC crew, what it do? Robert Andrade, what up? Delphine, what's up? Tough Cookie, yo. Without further ado, though, we're going to jump right in with the one and only Drew. For those of you that are unfamiliar with him, you're going to get familiar right about now. Drew One was born in Los Angeles, California. He started breakdancing and popping in 1983 and doing graffiti in 1984. During the mid-'80s, gangs in LA became fierce, and so was their recruitment process. Football teams and crews began to start their own gangs, and shortly after, he found himself in and out of the prison system while struggling with drug abuse. From '87 to 2004, he experienced short periods of freedom, and when he finally was released in 2004, he began a path to become a drug alcohol counselor. He now uses his gifts, talents, and passions for hip-hop as a means to help others. Yo, without further ado, y'all, put your hands together for the one and only Drew One. Y'all, make some noise, make some noise. You know what it is.
Yo, what's going on, man? Thank you.
Man?
It's an honor to be here, man. This is my first interview, and I'm stoked, man. I can't wait to get into this, brother.
Well, let's do it, man. LA is in the building. Let's start from the very beginning. Where are your parents from?
My mom and dad are from Cuba. They're from Havana, Cuba. It's a crazy story, man. That's what I think the motivation, the drive is. They left in a raft coming across the ocean 90 miles to Miami, and my dad paddling along with me and my sisters but my sisters in the arm to come to the United States. And then when they came here to the United States, they transferred and they went to California, and that's where I was born in Los Angeles, California.
So they were part of forgive me for not knowing the exact name, the Mario flights. What was the name of it?
No, it was 1967 when they came, and they escaped from Cuba. They basically got a raft, put some wood, cardboard, and all kinds of stuff onto it. And that's what the ambition and the drive is, man. Like, I look at it and I say, they took a journey and took a risk at life and came over here for us to have a better life. And, you know, I look at my past and I say, man, like, the struggle and all the sacrifices that they made to get here to this country. And you know, it finally hit me 30 years later. I finally said to myself, man, what am I doing? You know what I mean? What am I doing if I'm not doing something right? They gave up everything to come here, man. Wow. We made it here, and they gave me a good life. But it was a good life. You know, in the beginning, mom and dad were together. Everything was peachy. Everything was great. And all of a sudden, mom and dad started getting to a point that they didn't feel comfortable with each other. They started having their differences, and they were struggling, and finally it came to a point where there was going to be a divorce. And just being in that divorce process was pretty hard, man. You know what I mean? The whole tug of war on who do you choose, like, come with me, you know, come with me, I'm your mom, come with me, I'm your dad. And that whole fight and struggle, I think, was an epic, you know, point in my life right there at the age of like 5 years old, where I started feeling a very deep emptiness in my life, you know, because they took me to court. The judge asked me, who do you want to live with? You have your mom and dad sitting across from you. You're looking at them like, what did I do wrong? Why aren't they with me? Why don't they love me? And to a point that you're confused, you're young, and I don't think any judicial system or any court system should put a child in a situation like that where you have to choose which parent you want to be with, you know. And finally, I was awarded to my mom. Shortly after that, my mom got a boyfriend. He tried to come in with his rules, his regulations, his bullshit, and I was not going for it, man. You're not my dad. Who are you? All that came in effect. So it was just I started seeing the anger and the frustration and the hurt just dwelling within me, but not being able to express it, because coming from a culture that we don't talk about our feelings, it was pretty hard to express how you felt at that time. So I bottled all that shit up, and I just started rebelling against life, you know what I mean? And I remember growing up, finally my mom had, you know, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and my mom finally decided that the only thing she could do with me is call the police on me. And the police came, they handcuffed me. I went to jail like at 8 years old. I was scared. I went to East Lake Juvenile Hall. They put me in a holding tank, and they wanted the whole scared straight shit with me. And for me, at the time, I was just scared. And I don't, you know, at that age, you don't know what to do. So you're going to put this persona and you're going to make it look like nothing's wrong. But as soon as they closed that door and it was me and that pillow, I was crying, man.
Mhm.
I was crying. I was hurt. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And 2 days later, they came and got me out. But I think that's when my judicial system, like, experience started at that early age, where I wasn't afraid anymore. Like, you already put me in jail. You betrayed me in the sense that you put me in jail as a parent. Like, and I just had a lot of rage and anger and hate from that moment on. But it was pretty tough growing up like that, you know?
So what was LA like in the early 70s, the early 70s where you landed, right?
Yeah, when I landed in LA, I grew up in an area where it was gang infested. There was gangs everywhere. But I didn't want to be a gang member. I just didn't see that in my per se, in my future. I looked at it, I walked past them, they would call me nicknames and little homie and this and that, and I would just be on my way to the elementary school. And sooner or later, I started seeing the block letters, the placazos, the letter styles and stuff like that, the black and white, you know, and it fascinated me. I enjoyed looking at it, but that was not for me, you know, like I was like, that's cool. But I was fortunate enough to have like a basketball coach that was in my life, because I lived right across the street from the elementary school. So at an early age, I was around 9 years old. I was already like 5'7", 5'8". I was huge, you know what I mean? I'm still huge, you know, and he saw something in me, and he took me on, and he basically adapted and comforted me and taught me how to play basketball. And that's where I was. I was like, basketball is my life. I went across the street every day, practiced, played basketball, and I got that, you know, that pat on the back, that love that I never got from my parents, because I don't blame it on them today, because they're just built a different way. There's no such thing in a lot of our cultures. What happens is that they're just taught to provide, put a roof over our head, feed us, and just maintain shoes on our feet. But all that love, hugs, kisses, I'm proud of you, you're doing a great job, that's just not something that our culture, or in any culture, is taught to do as a parent. Because it goes back to our great-grandfather, to our grandfather, to our father, and they're just passing on what they think is what a father is or a mother is to provide, put a roof over our head. So I never got that. And having this emptiness within me, I kind of felt like when this coach took me on, I started like enjoying basketball, and he started, you know, making me feel like I was important, that I was someone. And at that point, I started seeing a lot of the gang writing, a lot of the stuff on the walls, and I started getting fascinated by it, but I always got pulled back in. You know, after school, in elementary school, I'd want to walk across the street or down the street and go check out the homies or this, that, or get in trouble, and he'd be like, where are you going? Come over here. We got practice. So he was a very strong, influential person in my life when I was growing up. But then sooner or later, what happened is that I started rebelling against my mom, and I started like skipping school. I started dodging that coach, and from that, basically, I started like, you know, finding myself more on the streets, skating, and then from the skating, I started, you know, experimenting with drugs, smoked a joint here and there, and then drank a beer, started sniffing spray paint, just to fill that emptiness and that why don't nobody love me mentality. You know what I mean? Like, why did my mom and dad divorce? Why don't they love me? Why don't they care about me? Why is it that they left me? You know, like that mentality which was inside of me that was like harvesting within me, and I felt like this emptiness, like purpose for me. So soon later, I started basically just playing ball and trying to fit in, man, trying to fit in and trying to find my identity of who I was. And by the time I was in 11 or 12 years old, I used to travel because I was a latchkey kid in a sense, because when somebody wouldn't be able to handle me, they'd send me away. So they'd send me to Florida, and I'd go live in Miami with my mom, sisters. And then if she couldn't handle me, she'll send me to New York. And then I live with my grandma. And then from my grandma, they sent me back to California. And I was just traveling, just kind of like felt like nobody wanted me mentality. And that's where I first started seeing like the color in graffiti when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I didn't know much about it. I started seeing colorful pieces. I was in Queens, Jackson Heights, 79th Street, Queens in the house, you know what I mean? But that's where I first started seeing this color of graffiti, and I was like, what is that? Because I was so used to this black and white Chicano style placazos, and it was different for me. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like, wow, what is this called? And my uncle at the time, he liked to dance and be a break dancer and stuff like that. We're talking about like 81, 82. Break dancing and popping was pretty big out there in New York. The graffiti scene was huge. I was intrigued by it. I started seeing it. And when I came back the last time back to California, my dad took custody of me. I came back with a different flavor. You know what I mean? I came back thinking I was a popper or a breaker. And I started practicing, and I believe that practice is the most important thing with anything that you want to put yourself to and to elevate yourself in any aspect of your life. And I started practicing. I wasn't that great at breaking because I was like a baby giraffe trying to break dance. But the reality of it was I adapted and I learned how to pop pretty good, so, you know?
Drew, when we talk about breaking and popping on the West Coast, which was a totally different phenomenon than the way it was going down on the East Coast, and since you got to travel between both, what were some of the main differences you saw and some of the similarities?
Well, for one, when I first got there and I started seeing I saw the style of clothing that they would wear, you know, which later on we adapted in California, but the style and just the flavor that they had and the music was more of like a cut and scratch, more beat, more kind of thing like that, where it was like, it intrigued you and it made you want to stomp your feet and get into the beat, you know? And during that time, we were barely getting out of it was kind of a disco, hip hop introduction into California and oldies. So when I went there as a young kid, I was like, what is this? And then my uncle, he snuck me into a place that, I don't know if it's still there. It was called Flash Dance or something like that. And everybody was doing it. You know what I mean? Everybody was popping and breaking. I was a young kid. And I was like, what is this? You know? And it was trippy to me because everybody had like this, it was all about dance. It was all about dance. It was all about hip hop. It was about music and unity, regardless of the, you know, the beef was settled on the streets or on the dance floor, you know, and over here we were going through like beef with neighborhoods and streets and stuff like that. And the dress code was different. And to a point that finally we adapted that style. You know what I mean? We started wearing the Kangos, the Adidas, the fat laces, the B-boy stance, and the belt buckles with our names, and you know, and we started dressing like that in a sense after, you know, because shortly after I got pretty good, and I really, once again, dealing with low self-esteem, I never really felt like I was able to be a part of something. So they had a tryout. You know what I mean? I remember me and my friend Dale, we went to this LA Breakers tryout. And I was like, what is this right here? And then I went in, I walked in, and I was pretty good at tutting, but I had to first, before that, I had to get a name. So I was good at the tut, I was good at Bugs Bunny, I was good at animation and TikTok and ticking and stuff like that, and the wave. I was pretty good, but not great, you know? So I walked in and with my anxiety high, and my friend first started and he auditioned, and then I auditioned, and both of us waited around, and they came out and they said, I'm sorry, keep trying. And they told me you're a part of LA Breakers. And I was like,
Wow.
what? Like, I made it, you know what I mean, to LA Breakers. And a lot of people that are around in that time, and they know this story, but it's phenomenal to me to be from an epic crew like that, you know, and to be able to be accepted and joined in that crew. But what happened shortly after is I still had that touch of like art and graffiti with, and I remember how it all began for me with the graffiti thing was because it's not like, you know, like I look at people today, and not to put, like, graffiti is when you write on a wall that's vandalism and it's illegal, you know. Some people, they consider graffiti their own terminology and their own form of graffiti is whatever they put basically, and they tag in the back of the alley or they tag on a can of a trash can. But when you finally get out there and you vandalize private property or something that doesn't belong to you, that's when it becomes vandalism and it becomes graffiti. So I ended up going back, and we had a linoleum that was kind of in the area where I grew up at, and I did like a little throwy or something on there with some color, and I wrote my name. And then my best friend, he said, oh shit. And I go, look what I drew. And that's where I got my name in 1984. He
Word.
basically gave me my name, and I just started from there. I was on my way to ninth grade or middle school, and it was something that just happened from one day to another. All of a sudden, writers started coming out of the woodwork. We all started meeting up. Shortly after that, I was in a crew that was called LA's Top, and from there, all my friends and everybody that we hung out with, they were all basically, they had no crew. And then one day they basically got together while they were on the bus, which that was our thing. Like New York is subways, Los Angeles is more of like the bus scene. So we tagged the buses, we rode from city to city, tagging buses, tagging the outside, the front, the basically the bus driver's side, and just tagged up shit everywhere, you know?
So well, man, this is awesome. A few questions. Did you get to check out like the Radiotron, Ice-T in his early days? Did you get to see any of that blow up? When Breaking came out, what did that do for your neighborhood?
Well, what happened is that the Radiotron was more of an area where it was separate from where we were at. Like, we were the Sunset Riders. We knew of the Belmont Tunnel. We knew of the Radiotron, but I can't say that I was there from the ground up. You know what I mean? I've gone there and checked it out when all the pieces and everybody was doing the stuff there. So during that time, we would go there and we would just basically check it out and do this and that and catch tags around there, because we would catch the bus going down that street or going in that area and get off and then jump on another bus and then jump on another bus. That was our daily routine every day, like just from the morning all the way till night, wake up again, do it again. So during the Breaking movie scene, like the whole Radiotron thing, I wasn't there to witness that and be a part of the painting and the drawing and all that. But all the artists that were there, like, I've grown up with them. I've known them in some way or another, or we've had some type of connection through graffiti throughout the years, and we know of each other. But to say that I was there when it was established, I was not there.
Okay. Well, yo, for those of you that are just tuning in right now, we got the one and only OG Drew One representing LA. We are in the building. If you like these stories and you want us to continue to share them, please purchase a badge. $1, $3, $5. It goes a long way. And we're just learning about the West Coast, man, and we're just doing this, man. Thank you so much for joining us, Drew. So, so what was it like as a youth when you have hip hop, when you have gangs, when you have basketball? How did you as an individual decide, okay, this is my route, this is where I'm going? Because everything is fighting for your attention.
Well, at that time, you know what? I'm trying to find attention. That's what I'm trying to do, and that's regardless. I'm a grown ass man now that I could be able to say that. But at the time, you're not vulnerable enough to admit that to anyone because we're all trying to find the same thing. So at one point, we finally connect with something, and when you connect with something, you hold on to it, and that's what we were doing as individuals, as young adults. We were basically to a point that, you know, I was accepted. I felt that warm, fuzzy feeling of love. I felt that, like, that's right. You know, we didn't have older homies. You know what I mean? Like, everything that we learned as far as with graffiti in my generation, I believe, was basically through other people. You know what I mean? And then finally Subway Art came out, and then we started seeing, like, whoa, like, this is what graffiti is. And then that's when we started looking at it and saying, okay, the rules and regulations, like for graffiti, were kind of passed on from generation to generation, but we didn't have like older homies. We were the ones that were like the older homies. You know what I mean? Like, we were the first foundation in that era of graffiti in Los Angeles, I believe, even though there might have been some people before us. I know Zephyr came over here. I know Soon was here, but we never engaged with them and talked to them. So we were learning as we were going. And one thing that is trippy and weird, and it's a trip to me, is that we never were taught don't go over anyone. But when we attacked and rushed and ran up to those buses, it was a form of respect that we had for each other as riders, that we wouldn't tag over each other, even though there was there was space or no space at all. You know, we'd find space. We wouldn't tag over anyone. We would, and everything was basically just, in a sense, would be on the bus or on a wall without us going over each other. And it wasn't something that was given to us or taught to us. And that's something that we kind of like learned on our own. And we basically continued doing that for a while. Now it's a whole nother generation. But I'm you know what? One thing that somebody told me that's pretty shocking and pretty sad is that, when they told me like this, they said, when you die, then we'll finally have an opportunity to have our shine. And I was like, what do you mean by that? You know what I mean? And it's kind of true in a sense, because it's unfair to the young writer that's basically doing the work and doing everything that he's doing to get to a point in his life where he, you know, is fighting the same struggles, and nobody is giving them that recognition that they deserve. And it starts with us as older generation, and teaching them and guiding them, and being able to look at them and say, you know what, that's just dope. Or giving them some, you know, creative criticism and telling them, you know what, you need work on this, you need work on that. Even though for some people they might not want to take it, but I believe that us as a generation, my generation, that we carry ourselves like, okay, I'm the OG. I don't have to stoop down or go down to talk to another generation and try to guide them and give them insight, you know, on anything and where the foundation is. And not saying that, oh, we started this or this is where it came from, but the foundation at least, so they could be able to have their feet planted on solid soil instead of being in quicksand, you know?
And who were some of those early writers that put you down and really kind of showed you the ropes?
I'll be honest with you. It was trial and error, man. Like, I didn't have any older homies. Like, once in '85, you know, the crew started OTR, and it was started by Dex, Reg, Bryce, Cade, and Reggie. You know, they started the crew without no handbook, without no knowledge of anything. They started the crew. I was already from LA's Top, and we were all friends amongst that. But then later, shortly after, I joined OTR, which was basically in that same summer. OTR started in the summer of 1985. About a month later, I was rejoined with them, and I was with them, and that's where OTR basically, it was basically established in 1985 at King Junior High School. You know.
What does it stand for?
On the Run.
On the Run. No doubt, no doubt. So as OTR starts and you guys are kind of making, you're making your own way. You don't have mentors. How did you lay the foundation for the next generation, and what happened after your formative years in graffiti?
Well, I think that we were just kind of all just had one purpose. Like our purpose was to be a bombing crew, and that's a great definition. That bombing for us back then was basically doing tags and basically bombing the streets. Now it's defined differently, and it's basically categorized as different things. It's called piecing. It's called, but we kind of identified ourselves as taggers and as riders. Mm-hmm. So what happened with that is that we just like to tag and ride on buses. Later on, with the years that kept on going, then that's when we started, like, the people would basically be drawn to us because of our tagging, but there was other crews that were coming out too. There was a lot of other crews that were all coming out at the same time, and every crew was different in their own sense. That some crews were primarily bombers that did pieces, and some crews were a little bit of both, but there was primarily a lot of people were all coming together, and everything was coming as one. But I don't think, like, when it came to the generation that I grew up with, there was no rule book or no guide to our older homies that kind of like schooled us in a sense. We all kind of like were like going with the flow and keeping our space, identifying with each other. It was a lot of unity, a lot of friendship, a lot of bonding, a lot of like tagging, bombing, racking. It was just a different era then. That it was not about egos. It was not about who got up the most. It was just you and a bunch of other young kids all just doing what we wanted to do and destruct and vandalize and just tag up and destroy people's property, and that's what our sense of belonging was at the time. No, we didn't really have like. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, we didn't really have no mentors like in that I grew up with in any sense of anything.
And so how did the general public differentiate the difference between gangs and crews? Because I know the youth know what's up, but how did the general public, were you all just kind of lumped together as one?
Well, I think that at the time they just saw like writing on the walls. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of kids. Because when we got together and we tagged, it was 15 to 20 of us attacking a bus, right after school, elementary. Our dress code was different. The way we looked, the way we carried ourselves as far as our clothing, and the way we would basically have, jeans. And that's how we identified with each other. We knew that you were a rider is because you had ink on your pants, you had ink on your shoes, you had ink on your hands. And the common question was, do you write? And then right away, oh shit, that's you. And then identity was a very important thing in that time. Nobody really took pictures. If they did, it was only a few people that did. And those are historical now. But I think society itself, what happened is that they just saw like, oh, what's going on here? Because gang members weren't tagging on buses. They weren't climbing up rooftops. They weren't climbing up and doing, heavens or none of that stuff that later became that word. But it was more of just like in the neighborhoods, in the Chicano streets or the suburban street areas, more just like that was where you would see that. But when it started becoming like in the streets where it was visible, then I think society said, what is this? And that's when I think it became like a phenomenon, and everybody was like, what, they've drawn more to it, and let's start some programs or start something to try to criminalize this and make it into basically a vandalism charge.
No doubt. No doubt. And as we were talking about LA culture, how it differs from, East Coast culture, you guys had the movie Breakin', which was a huge influence. Then comes the movie Colors. Mm-hmm. How was that amongst youth culture? What did that do for the youth?
Well, Colors came out in, I think, in 1987.
That
So,
sounds right. Yeah.
okay, when Colors came out, that was already a whole nother episode of the graffiti.
Uh-huh.
That was where now we were taggers, we were graffiti writers, we were having fun, doing our thing, but then the subculture and the neighborhoods where we were doing this at, the gangs itself in that area were like, you know what? F this. This needs to stop. Either you're with us or you're against us.
Mm.
And that time, I think it was when Colors started coming out and promoting, gangs, whether it was the Chicano gangs and the black gangs. And it was just basically now everybody saw it full color and they said to themselves, okay, now what's your choice? But before then, I think that what happened is like in 86, there was a lot of things going on in Los Angeles, like for a lot of crews and a lot of graffiti writers, that we were being suppressed and we were being like manipulated and forced in to join these gangs at that time. And what happened is that a lot of us just wanted to stick with what we were doing. Like we didn't want to be gangbangers. We didn't want to represent a neighborhood. I enjoyed tagging and writing on walls. Then the mini truck Sarah came out. The football team started coming out, playing against each other. And then the disco scene was all in effect. And everybody was just, in a sense, like trying to belong in something, And these gangs where we were at, they would come and they'd be like, and next time we see you right here, you're going to get jumped into my neighborhood. And we had to form an alliance within ourselves as friends and be like, I don't want to be a gang member. So what happened is that we made up a name, we put it together, and then we said we're going to be a group of friends, and this is going to be our group. And what happened with that is now it became overnight, from one day to another, now we became the rivals. So we had to protect ourselves, we had to fight, we had to do all that. So from the graffiti monologue, as far as being a tagger, just writing and just enjoying life, now we had the cops chasing us, we had gang members chasing us, we had different crews chasing us, and now we're identified as a gang, and we're like, how did this even happen? All I wanted to do was write on walls. I didn't want this. I didn't sign up to be a gang member, but they identified us as it. We started getting white carded, Northeast crash unit. Everybody started harassing us, messing with us. From there, the gangs in the neighborhood started messing with us, and it wasn't real until one of my best friends got murdered. And when that happened, it was a shocking experience, because I was there and he died in my arms, Oh, wow. And here I am, about a 16-year-old kid, holding somebody in their arms, putting this finger in his throat, trying to stop him from bleeding and trying to save his life. And there was nothing I could do. And that's when it became real, And during that time, the realness became like separated the real from the people that were just hanging around. And that's where I think it became, for me, a different episode in life. I put down in 87, it started getting to a point that, you know what? This is a gang, and this is where we're going to be, and we're going to go with it. And whoever doesn't like it, they're our enemy. And I went with it. And I lost a lot of people and a lot of friends. I lost a lot of my freedom. But also with all that, I also lost a part of me, because like I said in the beginning, I was a little boy that was just confused, that just wanted to be able to be accepted. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be able to have that pat on the back from my dad or from somebody in my life that cared about me. And now I just lost somebody, and everybody was my enemy. And I took it to another level, and I started gangbanging. I put away the fat shoelaces. I put away the Kangos. I stopped dressing and acting like a tagger and a graffiti writer, and I put on the 56 pair of pants. I put on the white T-shirt. I put on the Nike Cortez, and let's go. You know what I mean? And that's where I started seeing in and out of jail. I already was in juvenile hall a few times for vandalism. I have over like 21 vandalisms before I was an adult. It was just, I believe that it was just stepping stones, that it had to lead to that. And then from there, I remember at 18, I was already sitting in the county jail. No mentor, no one to school me and guide me and say, hey, when you go into jail, this is what's going to happen. I just walked in, had my back against the wall. They came up to me, asked me who I was, where I was from, and just went with the flow, man. And I started becoming like cold, I would say. Nothing, I was emotionless. That was my biggest thing. I think that I had no emotions, no feelings. I wasn't sensitive to anybody's, because it took, I think when that day when my best friend got killed, I think it also took me, you know. So it
was the prison and or jail system active in like stimulating a young person and trying to get you on the right path, or once you're in the system, that's it?
No. Once you're in there, there's rules and regulations we have to follow. There's you're gonna go with the flow, or you're gonna get boop-bopped and get out. You know what I mean? You're not gonna be a part of it. So it's a structure that, once again, here we go back to this little boy that never had structure in his life and had this like, here, homie, hold this and do this. And then all of a sudden you get that pat on the back. That's right, little homie. You know, so it was back to that inner child once again, where I wanted to be accepted. So when I went into county jail too, I was a knucklehead. I was a knucklehead, and I was in and out the whole time. And what the biggest thing of it all was, which was crazy, is that me being one of the first people from that, you know, that generation, I was one of the first ones to go to jail. So when I went to jail for 6 months and I came out, everybody looked at me like, oh man, like you went to jail, like wow, like damn, the big homie. And I was only 18 years old. But I came in, I held myself, I did my thing, and I walked out, and I missed, and now I'm being glorified and being put on a pedestal amongst my own peers. So that was a driving force in my life that made me be like, shh, this is where I belong. And I think that's where it all comes back to, you know what I mean? Like the whole acceptance, the whole like, I'm proud of you, that I never got, that no matter how hard I tried, how good I try to be, and run up to my dad and say, look, Daddy, look, I got an A. And he'd say, you should have got an A+, you know? And just the whole like, hey, I'm going to jump off the bridge. Well, jump off when I'm not here. You know what I mean? The whole thing about like the love. And that's what I was always seeking and I always wanted, is that acceptance. So when I went full throttle and I went to the gangbang side, I did it. And I didn't play. You know what I mean? I enjoyed, because I felt this anger inside of me, and I didn't know how to take it out. But then, even then, I was just drowning myself with alcohol, drug abuse. I was high all the time. I was always, no matter what it was, I was a garbage can when it came to drugs. Like if you had it and you gave it to me, I would take it. So that was a whole nother level right there of not even seeing clear, my foggy like sight, not having no goals, no future. And then having peers in your life growing up too, like with that lifestyle, having them tell you, like probation officers, police officers, different people in your life that you encounter that you're supposed to get positive reinforcement from, they would tell me like, you're not going to make it past 18. You're going to die on these streets. And I was like, well, then if I die, I'm going to leave a legacy. But in reality, all I was going to leave was a monument. You know what I mean? That said, here lays, rest in peace. And I wanted to put in the most work, put in the most damage, be the so-called most downest, so that way when I leave this earth, people could be like, oh, the homie this, the homie that. So I put extra effort into a lot of things, and I didn't care Because if I didn't care about my own life, how was I supposed to care for somebody else's?
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
and the drugs didn't help. The alcohol didn't help. I was just like on a road of destruction. I was afraid and not able to commit suicide because I felt, and I was always taught that's not the way to go out. But the thing is that the lifestyle I was living was basically I wanted somebody to take me out, whether it was drugs or the gang life.
And what would you say eventually clicked with you? Like, you know what? This actually is not the way I want to live my life. Did you have a defining moment?
It didn't happen till later, man. Even after that, I got out of the county jail, and I still went with that. You know what I mean? I still went with it, and then I got shot. I've been shot 5 times. I've been stabbed 13 times. You know what I mean? And this is all on the streets, gang banging and just craziness. You know what I mean? I went through it, man. I went through it, and by God's grace, I'm alive today. And that's the only thing I can say. But I still didn't matter. It didn't matter to me that I was been shot. I've been stabbed. I would get out of bed and the next week, 2 weeks, recuperate, get back on drugs, and let's go. Let's go. Like, we got to get revenge. We got to push this narrative, and we have to continue doing this, And finally in 91, I got incarcerated. And when I went to the jail, I was facing a lot of time. And they were offering me 37 to life.
Wow.
And I fought it. And we're talking about 91, which was an eye-opening experience because I was back in the county jail. I was a little older. I thought I knew what county jail was. I was running around. I was dealing with a lot of people that were all young like me, all facing life. And I finally made a decision to stay sober. And I found myself in a holding cell with 6 other people, all killers, everybody just wondering who's going to be stabbed next. And I said to myself, I'm already amongst killers. I need to find soberness in my life. So I chose not to get high no more. There was drugs in there, of course, but I just said, no, this is where it ends. And I started seeing a clearer life. But I didn't change. I just changed the drug. You know what I mean? I was still an asshole, but I was a sober asshole. You know what I mean? Yeah. I wasn't a user at the time, but I was still the same person. And I believe that that's where the big effect in life is. Like, people try to change what they're doing, but they don't change who they are. And I believe that that's a very important part in anything in life. Like, you could, take the person out of the hood, but you can't take the person out of the person mentality.
The person, yeah.
Exactly. So I did that. I felt my life was over. They're facing me with all day. I'm never going to get out. And why not? Why not die in here and just go out with the bang? So I was still being a knucklehead. I still ended up being a knucklehead. Finally, I ended up going upstate. I ended up in a level 4 prison, stayed there for a couple of years. And then I went to another level 4, in and out of the hole, in and out of the shoe, just constantly just madness. And finally, I ended up in a level 3. And when I ended up in a level 3, I was just like, where is this place? I was in, and it was calm. Because everywhere else I've been for the last 9-10 years was all level 4, and everybody was just, you had to be on your P's and Q's. You had to be on your toes, because everybody at the drop of a dime was basically just killers trying to kill. And you had to be on good standings. You had to be solid, and that was fine. And that's what I was. But when I ended up on a level 3 after my points dropped and I was able to go to level 3, I was like, this was different for me. It was a different environment. Mm-hmm. And I stood there for a while, and while I was there, right away, because of my drug history and my past, they put me in a program that was a drug program, and I was like, oh, hell no, like, I'm not going to go here. And to this day, I believe it was the best decision that I ever made in my life, was to go to that program, because it taught me and who Jesse really was, or who Drew really was as a human being, And I went into that program, and at first I didn't go in there for the right reasons. at all, at all. I went in there because I saw potential that I could be able to do something in there, to be able to help, you know, with my commissary, my store, whatever it was. I saw a female. She looked at me. I looked at her. We caught eye. And I knew that I could manipulate her because that's what I was. I was basically good at that. And I went in there for the wrong reasons. And at the end of it all, I ended up staying there because I ended up listening to what they were saying. I took the cotton out of my ears. I put it in my mouth. I started paying attention. I started realizing that these people have the same problem as me, you know, like why I was so destructive and so, you know, eager to put these drugs in my body and destruction in my life. And I would listen and listen, and then from there, keep in mind, I've already done 13 years. And I already said to myself, you know what? And a lifer, he told me once, like, what are you doing? Like, why don't you want to go home? Like, what is wrong with you? And I finally just started listening, man. Started listening. I took full responsibility for my past. I took full responsibility for everything that I did. And all of a sudden, they transferred me, and I ended up in a level 2. And that was crazy because I'd never been in a level 2, which was dorm living, and it was just, what the hell am I in? You know what I mean? And I started working the program, and I started being involved in the program and learning about myself, learning about forgiveness, learning about like guiding and learning that a lot of people are just like me, empty inside and just want to fill it with the substance or gang life or any type of addiction that we have. And so with that, in a sense, I started saying, okay, this is cool. I can deal with this, and I'm going to go home. I'm finally going to go home. But in a part of me was like, what's there to go home to? You're going to go back to the same street. You're going to go back to the same neighborhood. You're going to go back to the, but then I had to snap out of that, and you got a chance again of having a second chance at life. And for me, what happened is that I finally woke up, and I said, you know what, let's finally give me a chance. Let's try this out. And I paroled in 2004. And when I paroled in 2004, I got out. I went back to where I grew up, and my family was like, nope, you're not staying here, because it was in headquarters right there. And eventually it was going to be all bad. So they basically helped me out, put me in a little apartment, and I stood there, and then I enrolled in college. And luckily, while I was incarcerated, also another manipulation scam is that I got my GED while I was in there. Right. And the reason why is because if you finish, you get a pizza. You know what I mean? So for me, it was always a prize at the end that I did anything for, you know? And when I look at it and I say to myself, okay, you know, I'm thankful that I did that. Then from there, what happened is I went straight from, got out. When I first got out, I was on high-risk parole, in good standings, you know, got out, lived in my neighborhood for a hot second, and then my sister's like, nope, you're gone. And she moved me out. She put me in a place. It was a studio apartment, and I started going to college. And I always thought I was dumb. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, because I was told by everybody that I was stupid. I'll never amount to nothing. You'll always be a loser. You're going to be in jail the rest of your life. Like all these people that were supposed to be my peers or my mentors or people that were educators, they were the ones that were telling me this. So I believed it, of course, you know? So when I started going to school and I started reading, and one thing about graffiti, what I learned is that I basically, I have a photographic memory.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why I have a photographic memory, I finally realized it, is that because when we're on the bus and we're passing, we see all the writing on the wall, we read it backwards, right? This is crazy. I know you guys will say, what the? But if you think of it, we used to pass by on the buses so fast. And the first thing that we do when we're driving or we're walking or we're basically in a car is look at the writing on the wall, and we could tell where we're at, right? So I know where I'm at because of the writing on the walls. So by me doing that for so many years, rubbernecking and trying to catch somebody's tag outside of on the bus, it put something in the part of my brain that it basically taught my brain to have a photographic memory, which is strange. But what I started doing when I went to school, I thought I was dumb. I thought I was not educated, and I didn't even have half a brain. But when I would read something and read something and read something and then go back to test, it would stay with me. You know what I mean? And I was like, what is this? And then it finally came to me, and I finally said to myself, it took me a process and for me to think of, because you know what, now I do like to work on the brain and be able to have like my thoughts and be able to be like, okay, this is the reason why, not because of gravity or because of life. It's more of like our circumstances and our environment and the choices that we make. So the thing is from me going to college, I basically got on my first ever academic like achievement. You know, I ended up going to college to be a drug and alcohol counselor, and during the course of being in a junior college, I got a full scholarship, and I was a valedictorian in basically that year. Crazy, you know what I mean? Here's this boy who's been always told he was dumb, he was stupid, it never amounts to nothing. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting up there in front of 100 other people that graduated with me and giving a speech and talking about, like, how I did it, you know? And it wasn't a charity event. It wasn't because, hey, let's just take this brown boy and let's throw him up there and let's let him look at the world and make him think that you could do it too. It was because of my academics and my education and how I performed in school. So it was an achievement for me. But the sad thing about it too is that here I am once again receiving this award, and I'm standing there and I'm looking around, and guess what? We go back to that fifth grader or sixth grader where you're looking out into the audience looking for your mom or your dad. Where are they? And they're not there. So at that moment in your life, you have a choice. You know what I mean? You internally look at that and you say to yourself, F this, I did this for them and they're not here. And look at me, I'm proud. Yes, I was an F up all my life, but look at me now. Can't you at least be here? Or you say to yourself, you know what? I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. And you take that award and you move forward and you be the best person that you could be. You know what I mean? So that could have been a downfall. And most people, you know what? We have to look at the inner self again and look at like, that was me. If it was cold, if it was hot, if somebody said no, if somebody said yes, I always searched and looked for an excuse to be like, see, you never did love me. See, you never did care about me. You never were there for me. If you would have been there, I wouldn't, you know. And you finally have to understand that you take accountability and responsibility for your actions and say, you know what, I want a better life. I want to enjoy the fruits of the world. I want to be able to be a better person. And you finally identify with who you really are, and you go forward with that, bro. You know what I mean? And that's where it kind of like went from there, and I got accepted to Cal Poly Pomona, and you know, I continued with my education, and finally, like I said, I was doing all that. I was scared to go around the homies not because of I was a bad guy or nothing like that. It was just I didn't want to go back to jail. I was trying to do good. And then my little homie, basically, he told me, hey, we're having a barbecue, come down. And I was like, oh, man, this barbecue, I was paranoid. I was paranoid the cops were going to show up. They were going to get me. I was going back to jail. I was going to lose it all. And I went to an OTR barbecue, and I saw all the old friends and everybody in there. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And that's how I kind of like gradually, slowly but surely started coming back into the graph scene. My homies from the neighborhood, they're basically like, hey, you know, do your thing, homie. Do your thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're welcome. You got love. The door will always be open, but do your thing. You know what I mean? Enjoy life. You deserve it. and that's where I'm at with them. I'm in good standings with them. I'm in good standings in general, period. I didn't go out backwards. I came out solid. I'm still solid. And now I just want to give opportunity and hope to those that are confused and lost, just like me
So
growing
have
up.
you found people now that were like you 15, 20 years ago that you're now helping with these new skills that you have?
You know what's a trip, man, is that one thing I've learned is that I addiction comes in different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the forms that I could be able to relate with and be able to meet you where you're at is through graffiti.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many people DM me, so many people contact me, so many people that ask me and confidentiality and ask me, I need help. I want help.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guide me? Can you help me? Can you send me in the right direction? And they're afraid. And the problem is that don't be afraid to ask for help, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing. Like put your pride in your pocket and put the ego to the side. And if you're going through some shit, there's people out here that'll help and guide you. We're not going to hold your hand. We're going to guide you and send you. The rest is on you. In recovery, it's not a thing that we're going to do that we're going to hold your hand and take you and walk you through it. We're going to give you the right resources. We're going to put you in the right program, and then the rest is on you. We want you to face those demons.
What would you say is the psychological profile of a writer?
I think that, you know what, we're trying to find our identity. We're trying to be destructive. We're trying to cause chaos and confusion. We like to just F things up. I think that we're dealing with a lot of anger and frustration. I think that's why we want to destruct and be disruptive. I think that we also want to be at a point that we get that pat on the back. We get that glorification when people start saying, hey, you were up, you know what I mean? Or you were down, or like you got that heaven, you got this spot, like, and then you get those likes. And that's why Instagram is so popular, because it's the whole, like, how many likes do you get, you know? And it makes you feel good about yourself. It's all about self-esteem, and you get 3 likes and you're not feeling well. But if you get 100 likes, you feel like you're on top of the world. And that's where I kind of like looked at this and I said to myself, you know what? God has given me a platform. I'm not no superhero, superstar, all city killer, none of that, right? But I've gotten blessed and fortunate enough with the followers that I have 30,000 followers. And what are you going to do with it? That's what I asked. That's what it was asked to me. Like, you have that many followers. What are you going to do with it? You know what I mean? And my goal and my purpose, I believe, is to reach those that have been forgotten or that are lost, you know, and that I could be able, through utilizing graffiti, to be able to reach them. And that's what I do. You know what I mean? I do have my fun. I go and enjoy life just like anybody else, but I'm a family man. I have a house. I have kids. I have a full-time job. I have everything that I need to have. But I also enjoy myself, and I like to travel, which I never was able to. But I think the mindset of a lot of people is just that when you get that gratification, that self-gratification of you just putting a marker to a wall or a spray can to a wall and catching a tag and finding, it's adrenaline that you get. That's what it comes down to. It's adrenaline. And people have different types of adrenaline, where it's, you know, the illegal adrenaline or the legal adrenaline. And it's just where you have to find yourself and be like, okay, are you happy with what you're doing? And are you finding joy in what you're doing? Or are you just doing it to just be a follower? And if that's the case, then you need to like reevaluate what it is that you're doing it for.
And you have any, as we wrap this up, you have any final messages and or shout outs you'd like to send out?
Well, the only thing I can say is that for me is that I want to clarify and identify with, first and foremost, that just because we're older doesn't mean that we're not acceptable to be able to be approached. You know what I mean? Or to be reached out to. Don't find yourself with this generation gap where this is the older generation, this is the middle generation, this is the youngsters. Like, we're all in this together, and we all enjoy what we're doing, whether it's graffiti, whether it's vandalism, whether it's whatever it is that you're doing. You know what I mean? Just if you're going through some bullshit and you're just not in the right place, one thing is, you can see on my shirt, man, it says, don't do vandalism, not that, no.
Word.
Don't end your life and be a rest in peace on a wall, man. You know what I mean? Reach out to somebody, give us an opportunity to be able to be like, hey, you know, like, I've been there, done that, and take, you know, take heed to some of the stuff that we've been through. Some of us have been there, done that, and we're not assholes or jerks that just want something from you. We just want a better life for you. You're our future generation, and you guys are the youngsters that are putting it down right now, whether it's from my crew, you know, or it's from another crew, you know. We all have somebody that you could talk to.
Word.
And I think as elders in this game that we're in, we need to put our pride in our pocket and be able to remember where we came from to be able to help those that are going through whatever it is that they're going through. And
absolutely. Yep. Sorry. So you heard it first right here, Museum of Graffiti, Art Talk Live. My man Drew One, the OG. Oh, yo, we need the proper definition. What is an OG so the people that don't know really know what's up? And how does someone become an OG?
Okay, for me it's gonna be old goat. Because this is the mask that I wear right now is because when I get asked by people in my crew or in the crews that I'm in, I know your homie Drew, or do you know your homie Drew? They say, I always that old fart or that old goat. You know what I mean? Because that's the definition that they gave me. But I believe an original graffiti artist. You know what I mean? Or it could be in any terminology that you believe. It's for you to decide what an OG is. An OG could be somebody that's just the guiding force in your life. Or it could be only God. Plain and simple. You know what I mean? So I want to also give a shout out to the crews that I'm from, LAT, OTR, RTDK, and I just recently, last year, was proud to be announced. I'm also from X-Men, and that's awesome. You know what I mean? The people that I looked up to and I grew up watching and looking at in the subway art, I've done collabs with them. Like I keep like I look at myself and I say, wow, I grew up looking at this guy and now I'm doing collaborations with them. So to me, that's awesome. You know what I mean? And it's just wherever you want to take this in your career. Like if you want to make it a career, then make it a career. If you want to be able to be a vandal, then be a vandal. If you want to be, but as long as you do it and you have a clear mind and you don't hurt, harm, or be a dick to anybody, then do it. Have fun, enjoy. Remember what graffiti is all about. It's not about anything else but you enjoying a medium in your life that you have fun doing. And thank you so much for having me. I hope that it was a great interview.
Yeah, man, our pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing, dropping these gems, man. Everybody, thank you for rocking with us. We have another minute or so if you want to pick up a badge, $1, $3, $5 to tell a story. Drew, your story is very inspiring. You seem like you're very approachable. If someone needs help, can they just send you a direct message and kind of get that guidance from you of what to do next?
Yes, please. Yes, please do that, and I'll redirect them in the right direction. And one more thing, it's not that I'm a vandal and I'm crazy all city and I'm all up everywhere. I wear the mask because I work for a corporation and organization that are crazy, all looking into like human resources is crazy here. They go into like your YouTube, Facebook, every little thing that you have, they're looking into it. And that's the reason why I do it. It's not because I think that I'm all city and I'm a vandal and I'm all up everywhere. I do it for my own protection because my job is what I love to do and I get paid for what I love.
There it is,
thank
man.
you so much.
Do vandalism, not fentanyl. You know what it is. The one and only OG Drew One. Show some love, y'all. We about to get out of here, man. Any final shout outs?
Shout out to Museum of Graffiti, to all the states and countries that I've been to for your welcoming, for your open arms, and you guys being there. To the first generation, to the fifth generation, and everyone else in between, man. Much love and respect. Peace.
Peace. We out. Bless.